Okay, everybody, so thanks for joining our Sales Taxes Track It, Report It, and Remit It webinar today. For those of you that haven't ever been into one of my workshops or chatted with me on chat or any of those things, this is who I am. My name is Nikki Layton, and I'm the VP of Customer Success here at Kashoo. What we do in customer success, our goal in customer success is to help our clients achieve their desired outcome with our product in a way that makes sense to them. So, obviously there's lots of different ways that you can get from point A to point B. What we try and do in customer success is help you get from point A to point B in a way that makes sense to you, in a way that works for you. So I've been involved in helping a lot of different small businesses all around the world, as well as people. I've been involved in quite a few different businesses, but I still currently have a personal training studio that we've had for 17 years, so helping people get fit and healthy, and then also had a software company for a while that was involved in fitness business management. So like I said, have been helping people and small business for a very long time prior to coming to Kashoo. And when I'm not busy working, I like to get outside, I like to go hiking, I like to go rock climbing, I like to go kiteboarding, hang out with my dog, who you see in that bottom right-hand corner. So that's just a very quick overview about who I am and some of the things, experiences that I've had that are hopefully I'm going to be able to use to share with you to get a little bit more out of Kashoo and make your lives easier than ever. So for those of you that are new to Kashoo, I'm just going to quickly talk about some of the great things that you can do with Kashoo. Obviously, you can track expenses and invoice clients. That's kind of the bread and butter of accounting software. The other things that we like to focus on are things like bank reconciliation. And if you don't really know what bank rec is, this is the process of confirming what's happening in your accounting software matches what happened in the real world. If you're not doing that, we've got some great help articles, and I run usually about once a month, I run a webinar on it, a workshop on it. So definitely check that out, because it's a great thing to be doing, ensures that you have accurate accounting. With Kashoo, we've focused on trying to make it really easy to use. We've made a bunch of improvements to the interface in the last couple of months as well. We've got all of your basic reporting you need, profit and loss, transaction history, everything like that, balance sheet. If you're using our iOS apps, you're available. You can use it both online and offline. So that's great if you have to travel for work or meet people in a lot of different areas where you don't necessarily have a Wi-Fi connection. So as soon as you do get back online, it's going to sync instantly. You're going to have your data across all your devices, and you're able to collaborate, of course, because we're an online platform. You're able to, give various people usernames and passwords. They can jump in. They can help you in real time. If you have questions, your accountant can log on, look at what you've been doing, and give you feedback. So I'm going to just step back for 1 second. Apparently my screen was paused. So I will just pull back. For those of you that missed it, there I am. That's a little bit about me. And then the great things you can do with Kashoo. Thank you, Ricardo, for drawing my attention to that. Somehow I had hit the pause button. So yeah, so that's basically where we got to, a little bit about Kashoo. So today's focus is on sales taxes. So obviously you have, different aspects. You got to track how much tax you've charged and that you've spent on things. You have to figure out, how do you report, how do you know what's going on, how much you're going to potentially owe the government, and then you actually have to, figure out how do you remit it through whatever online portal that your government has, but also how do you create the proper entry so that in your next remitting period in Kashoo, you have the proper data and that you don't be like, oh, well, yeah, that's not really the right amount because I didn't input the last one properly. So this is what we're going to cover. This is kind of the big meat and potatoes of what we're going to cover here today. Along the way, we're going to talk about some tips and tricks, like there are always kind of special ways that you have to enter tax if you have, somebody charged you something different. We're going to show you how to do that. And we're just going to talk a little bit about best practices for staying on top of your business finances. So that's our focus for today. Hopefully you're going to get a lot out of that. So without further ado, we're going to log into the software, and we're going to get started. So I just want to make sure I'm still logged in here because I logged in a while ago. Perfect. Okay. So in Kashoo, I want to switch which business I'm in. Thank you. In case you didn't notice that what I just did there, guys, you're able to have multiple businesses and you can switch back and forth with them, add new businesses. We do have special pricing available if you are having multiple businesses. So you can just click down here in this bottom right-hand corner on the chat button, and if you want to start another business and talk to us about our special pricing, just give us a quick chat right there, no problem. So before we really get into it, we're going to just go to settings. We're going to go to our tax area, and we're just going to pause. So there's a couple of key points or like key do's and don'ts that I want to talk through before we get into actually doing a lot of things in the software. So what you want to be really careful of is that when you set up these taxes, so your taxes are up here at the top, when you set them up, you want to make sure that each tax has its own set of accounts that it links to. So I'm going to click on this federal tax for a second. When you add a tax, you give it a name, an abbreviation, and a rate. And then I'm just going to click on this advanced settings. Down here, you'll see that we have a receivable account, a payable account, and an expense account. Sometimes we've seen situations where people have a couple of different taxes and they put all of them into the same sales tax receivable, sales tax payable, sales tax expense account, okay? It is really, really critical that you do not, repeat, do not do that. When you're setting up a brand new tax, you actually don't have to input anything at all into these three areas. Kashoo has kind of smart logic in it that as soon as you start using that tax, once you've used it the first time on an income or on an expense, it will automatically create the appropriate account and name it based on whatever the tax is called. So you can set up these accounts if you want, but you don't need to. We'll take care of it all for you. So if this tax is something that you charge on things that you sell, you charge on income, then it must be registered. That's kind of standard across the world pretty much, that you register to get a tax ID number, you register to charge tax, right? And so you need to make sure that you tick this box when you create a brand new tax. And ideally, you put your registration number in here, and then on your invoices, that registration number for your business taxes will transfer over onto an invoice. So if you send it out, then your clients will have the proper information they need from you. Okay, so I'm just going to step back for a second. So in this example business I've got going on, I've set up a federal tax, a provincial tax, and a state tax, right? So these are my different remitting agencies. Now, there are times where you need to charge multiple taxes at the same time, or even you have special rates for certain taxes. And this is what we use our tax shortcut codes for. So let's say, for example, I wanted to charge both my federal and my provincial tax. So in this point, I made a little shortcut that was like B for both, because that made sense to me. That represented F and P. And so you can see I use the abbreviations here, and that's going to be charged on both income and expenses. So I can create all these like special exceptions if I use them frequently. If it's not something I use frequently, if it's just like a one-off time I have to charge something different, you can do that at the income or the expense level. You don't have to come in here and actually create a shortcut code. But if it's something you use frequently, you can save yourself clicks of the mouse or typing or whatever. You can just speed up your process a little bit. So this is where we do that. So if I was going to create a new tax, okay, everybody watching, we simply hit create new tax. Let's say I call it new tax. I'm not actually going to add this one. I can call it new tax, and I can say that it's got a 10% rate. Then I'm going to click on my advanced setting, and I'm going to say this is registered, put in my registration number, and that's generally for like 99% of the taxes out there in the world, that's all you need to do. Okay? Kashoo will fill in the receivable, the payable, and the expense account. It will do it for you. You don't need to do anything with it. There are very few taxes that are calculated after other taxes. There are a few in the world, but not many. You would know if you had that. And by default, you can choose whatever tax rounding method you want. Neither one is incorrect, but different people want to round either at the line item or at the invoice total. And those are basically the two choices, line item or invoice total. So you don't have to do anything else. So that's just how easy it is to set up your taxes. Kashoo will make sure everything else is right for you. I would encourage you not to bother filling in these boxes and let Kashoo do all the hard work for you. Okay, so that's what we're doing when we're doing setup. The other thing around kind of best practices or key do's and don'ts, don't create multiple taxes up here at the top when you have to charge different rates. Okay, so let's say I normally have to charge 5% for my federal sales tax, but there are certain items that I sell, maybe alcohol, maybe whatever, where I have to charge 10% or 12% or 8% like I have in my example here. And so in this scenario, I just give it a shortcut called F8, and instead of it being 5%, I say 8% F, so 8% federal. And I give myself a note so I know why I set that one up. And basically what will happen is that every time I use this tax, it will track in the same category as this one. So then I won't have to go and get two different reports and two different things. So just be aware, you don't want to set up multiple taxes for the same remitting agency that are just different rates. You would use the tax shortcut codes for that type of function. All right. So that's all I want to talk about in setup. I just had a question come in. So Ronald asked about when a small business makes less than a certain amount per year and they don't have to pay provincial tax. Unfortunately, Ronald, I'm not sure the different rules about when you have to pay tax and when you don't have to pay tax. Basically, what I can tell you what I know, which is for BC, but really ultimately you would always want to check with your accountant, because every different state, every different province, even sometimes different industries have different rules. So I work in the personal training industry. We have to charge what's called GST, goods and services tax. For us, the rule is if you make over $30,000 a year. Remember, that's here in BC, specific to GST. You do need to check with your professional that you work with to find out what's appropriate. But as an example, if you are like in BC and Canada, if you're going to generate more than $30,000 a year in revenue, you need to start charging GST at the beginning of the year, ideally, because otherwise you wouldn't have charged your clients GST, but you'd still be responsible for it. So it's definitely the right time of year to be talking to your tax professional, because if it's a weird situation like that where, you know, maybe in June you go, oh, whoa, wait, I'm gonna hit over $30,000 this year, and you haven't been charging GST on the first like 6 months of revenue that you've got, you're still liable to the government for the revenue, for the GST on the revenue, even if you didn't charge it. So basically you're out that 5% that you need to pay the government. So talk to your tax professional, make sure you're talking to them about what you think you're going to do in annual revenues, and make sure you're on the right page at the beginning of the year. That's pretty much all I can say about that. So we just had another question, how to set up taxes for services performed only, to know how much taxes need to be paid quarterly or yearly. I don't really know if that would be any different than the way we've got this tax set up. Ultimately, we're about to go look at how you actually ring in things and put the tax on the items that you're selling. So you would set it up just like this based on whatever rate you're supposed to charge. And then let's go to the next screen and let's talk about how you actually apply tax to things that you sell. So whether you're selling goods or whether you're selling services, it's pretty much the same rate. Or it's the same, not pretty much, it is the exact same way that you apply it on an invoice. Okay, so hopefully, Ronald, I got you covered there. And let's see, Wiltrud, if I can get this clear for you. So if I, for some reason, haven't covered it off, guys, let me know. I'll try and circle back around and clarify what I can. Okay, so we're now ready. We've got our taxes set up. We're ready to start charging people tax and to start tracking how much tax we're paying on things. So let's say that I come into and I want to send someone an invoice. So I'm going to come to my invoice area. All right, and I'm going to put in a client here. So let's say that I'm going to put in Romeo. Now, if you're using projects or any of that sort of thing, go ahead and fill them in as needed. By default, it's given me an invoice number. It said it's due on receipt because I've got my due date as today. If I wanted to use a different due date, I could either pick a specific date or use one of the defaults I've got set up. But let's just say it's due today. And then I can come over here and I can choose what it is I'm selling. So in the case of like a service, right, maybe I'm going to do a photo session with these people. And I can say that this is booked for March 2nd, 2017, right? So like maybe I want to put a little more session. And I can say that's one, and I agreed to charge him $1,500, right? Now, here are all the various taxes that I've set up. So notice for each tax, we have a positive and a negative. Negative means that the tax is included in whatever price I listed. So if I say negative 5% federal, you can see it adjusts this amount down so that when I have 5% tax, it equals the amount that I inputted as the price. If I put both here, positive or negative, right? If I say both, then it's like, okay, $1,500, 5% federal tax, whatever I said my, I think it was 7% or 8% I said my provincial tax was, and then this is my total. So, and again, if I had multiple things I was selling, so let's say I sold also some prints, and maybe I sold 6 prints at $5.25 each, oops, $5.25 each, and that one I didn't have to charge both taxes, I only had to charge state tax on. So you can create various line items and apply different taxes to them, and then write in whatever notes you have and say add invoice, okay? Now, I'm going to click on edit right away because I want to, oops, I'm going to click on edit right away because I want to show you a few things that maybe you've never really noticed about Kashoo. So when we're on any screen in Kashoo, what you see is you see a list of mini reports right over here on the right-hand side. These mini reports are basically showing you what is being impacted by what it is that you're working on. So right now I'm on an invoice, so it's showing me my subtotal, my taxes, total due, everything like that, and then it's actually showing me which of my accounts in my GL or my general ledger, which of my accounts are being impacted. So this one's going up $1,500, this one's going up $3,150, my accounts receivable is going up by $1,730 because $13 because that's how much they owe me, so it moves into accounts receivable until they pay me. All that, and I can click on any of these and jump to those accounts. I can also click on this and jump to the client. All right, so basically this is where you're going to be able to see all of the information that you need to see. And then if you take a payment, you just simply add a payment, no big deal. Now let's just come back to the income and expense page, or even the invoices page. One thing we didn't talk about here was like the mini reports on these pages. So this is basically an overview of your income, unpaid invoices, invoices by client. Again, you see these mini reports, right? So before we go and talk about any reporting or anything else, I just want to cover off how you put in special rates or other things like that. So let's go to income and expenses. And let's go to enter an expense, because this is really common. I see it really quite frequently in the expense side of things. So when I say income and expense, I'm personally referring to things that you've already collected money on or spent money on, right? So this is more like where you do your historical data entry. So you have a bunch of income that you've already got, you can go and input it all. You do have a bunch of receipts in your wallet, you can come and you can enter them all. Versus like an invoice or bills to pay, those are things that are going to kind of be completed in the future, right? Here's the invoice, but it's not paid yet. Here's the bill, but you don't have to pay it for another 2 weeks. So let's just do a couple of expenses so you can see some different scenarios here. So I went to Adnax Express. I paid them cash today. Right, all this is already filled in for me, so that's all good. And let's say that I went and bought some food from them. Okay, and I could say food for staff meeting. And this ended up being $63.25. And that was the final amount of cash I paid. And in it, it included federal tax. But when I look at this federal tax amount is not what matches the receipt that I have in my hand. They told me that they actually charged me $2.57. So maybe something that I bought wasn't taxable, right? So it's very simple. If I want that to be $2.57, I go negative 2.57F. No spaces, because I want it to be negative, because I want the final price to stay at $63.25. The amount that I see on my physical receipt, no space, and the tax I want to apply. And then I hit enter. And immediately, you can see it updates this. And at that point, I can add the expense. So let's just say I go to that expense and I need to check everything. It all looks beautiful. That's great. But maybe maybe I was confused. Maybe there was a different way I was supposed to enter that. Maybe instead of saying it was $2.57 federal, maybe it was actually they charged me 6% federal, because that particular thing I purchased from them had a different rate. So you can also go 6% federal. Again, amount, percentage, no space, the tax type. And it will update it. If I wanted that to be negative, I could do negative, right? So this is called overriding the tax amount. So if you're ever going to do this and you're like, why isn't it working? I can't remember how to do this. Just come into the help area and oops. No, I thought that's what the article was called. It is what the article is called, apparently. So here, this article, overriding the tax amount, here's what we just covered, okay? So I know maybe it's not something you do on an everyday basis, so I like to draw attention to the fact that this help article is here so that you can remember how you do it next time. So it walks you through basically all different ways that you can do this. I just wanted to draw your attention to that. So that's how you can override the tax amount to be whatever you want, a certain percentage, a certain amount, add it on top of the price, include it in the price, however you need to do it. So basically, no matter whether you're entering income and you want to charge people a special rate, whether you want to say, I have a special and the price is going to be $1,000 including tax. So then you can just put it in at $1,000. And you can say including tax. Okay, that's $952.38. Bet you knew that off the top of your head, right? Probably not. Probably weren't able to do the math that fast. So you're able to just input it and it will be good to go. Okay, so we've talked about setting up your tax. We've talked about how you input the tax on the items you sell or the items you purchase, how you alter that to be any special rates that you want it to be. So now we're going to look at some reporting, okay? So we're going to come back in a little bit and we're going to look at this sales tax area. But before we do that, we're going to go to our reports. Personally, I use Kashoo to run my personal training studio, and I have to pay GST. So when I get ready for my GST, which I pay quarterly, I like to run 3 reports. So I come and I get my income statement. This information is also in the taxes area, but I like to pull the report just so I have it. So let's say that I'm pulling the report for December 1st to January 31st. Oops, hang on. December 1, 2016 to January 31. Okay, so here's all my sales income and here's all my expenses. So what I like to do, I like to just take a PDF of this and I put it somewhere and I have a folder going and I date it and I say, you know, December 1 to January 31 income statement, GST, right? So I know I pulled this from my GST for this date range. So that's the first thing. And ultimately, this is the number that we need for, usually you need your total income line for your tax remitting. We also show you this line in the sales tax area. So if you forget to do this, it's not the end of the world. I'm just telling you what I like to do and kind of so that I have all the proper documentation if I ever need to go back and look at it. The next thing I like to look at is the balance sheet. Okay, the balance sheet is as of a moment in time. So the end of my remitting period is January 31. So I'm going to put in here, apparently I can't type today, January 31. And again, I create a PDF. If you're more Google spreadsheets, you could put it in Google spreadsheets. You could have folders going. You could do whatever you want. But basically, I like to save a copy of these reports. So in case I ever alter anything, if I go back and make changes to it, I know what it was at the moment I remitted it to the government. And if you ever get it audited, knowing, you could say, here's how I got my numbers, here's my PDFs, here's my spreadsheets, whatever it is, and then they can be like, okay, great, and you're like, yeah, the reason it's different now is because I found a whole bag of receipts my wife had and my husband had, whoever had, my kid had, and realized that I hadn't inputted everything, so I had to go back and input things. It could have been lots of things, right? But what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at my tax area. So I want to see, you know, what my liabilities are. So I've got my payable and my receivable. They typically offset each other, right? So I save that report and then I'm good to go. And then the final report I like, and again, this is, you know, definitely kind of being extra careful, but I personally like, I like to pull my all transactions report. And again, I pull it for whatever my remitting period is. So if we're just saying, for sake of argument, that it's December 1 to January 31. And then if I was looking at my federal tax, I might say search just for federal. Or I could also, oh, sorry, I want my general ledger report, not my all transactions report. I want my general ledger report. Sorry about that, guys. They're just displayed differently. That's why I want this one. So if we say December 1, 2016 to January 31, 2017, and if we type federal here, you can see it pulled federal receivable, federal payable, federal expenses. So again, if I'm going to remit my federal, this is where I would pull my report. Now, one thing to notice here is that my starting balance was not 0. Okay, so that means that after maybe I didn't input my previous, the time I remitted my taxes before this, because ultimately, in a perfect world, and we all know how perfect we are at accounting, but in a perfect world, your opening balance in your tax account should be 0. And you're going to see that once I do this, I'm just going to save myself this little thing. Once I do this, you're going to see what happens here to my ending balance. Okay, so that's kind of like absolute best practices. Pull my reports, save them to a PDF, put them in Google Sheets, whatever format I'm comfortable with. I like to save them. put them in a folder, name them appropriately, create some naming conventions so I understand when I go and I look at this folder later what are each one. I don't have to open up 10,000 of them. Okay, so that's the reporting. So these reports are telling you things. They're telling you how much you paid on tax, how much you collected on tax. They're telling you maybe you forgot to enter last quarter's entry into your accounting software. It could be lots of things. So now we're going to go into the sales tax area. And so this is where we remit our sales tax in Kashoo. This is where we finalize our calculation. This is where we actually hit the button that creates the entry so that we end up with a zero balance. Okay. And so I'm going to hit sales tax here. Let's do the federal sales tax. Okay. Let's say it's December 1, 2016 to January 31, 2017. So we can see that we spent money on photographic supplies and telecommunications, and this is how much tax we paid. Now, in some scenarios, there are reasons why you wouldn't be able to claim 100%. So some things that you purchase are not 100% eligible. If you are not sure about this, I would just leave it at 100%. And at the end of the year, your accountant, your tax professional can make an adjusting entry based on what the rules are. If you are sitting down to talk with them and there are special rules they want you to follow, they should tell you what percentage of different accounts are eligible for. And then you could just update them here, and Kashoo would adjust that for you as needed. So if we said photographic supplies is only 50% eligible, then it takes part of that amount and it moves it down into an expense instead of a non-receivable. So Kashoo will do all of that for you. So at this point, all I need to do is I have to say, who am I paying it to? Now, my period ended January 31st. Here it is in February. I'm creating this now. What you should do is you should say it's due on receipt, it's due in 30 days, whatever, but it's not, it's due, right? It's not paid, because otherwise you're going to end up saying you paid it on January 31st and you didn't pay it on January 31st. You're paying it today or sometime in the near future. So at this point, we hit this button. Okay, and so this is where a lot of people sometimes forget to do. They're like, okay, I got all my numbers. I went and I logged into my online banking, or I logged into my government pay site, whatever it is, and I physically transferred them the amount of tax owing, but they didn't hit this button in Kashoo. Okay, if you don't hit this button in Kashoo, then you don't create the entry that shows that you're moving money out of your bank account and you're zeroing out your tax accounts. So it is pretty critical that you click this button. So I'm going to hit it right now. Everybody ready? I'm going to hit it. Boom. And now we have this tax, we have this bill here. I'm going to click on it. So if I did immediately go log into my online portal and physically pay this bill right now for $547.86, then I could simply come in here. I could click add payment. I could say today. I paid it from my bank, I paid it in full, and if I got like a confirmation number, you know, from my bank, I could do that so that I knew the confirmation number right there. So you'll notice again, we have these mini reports. They're all showing me exactly how I impacted each and every different account. So if we come back to that general ledger report right now, and we pull it for the exact same period, and we put in federal, notice my ending balance, zero. My expense category does not zero out. Because it's an expense category, it zeroes out at the end of every fiscal year. You'll notice it was doing that right here for me in the middle of this fiscal period. Okay, this is normal because it's an expense category, year-end adjustment to retained earnings. But these, my receivable and my payable, should zero out at the end of every remitting period. Okay, so we have now officially covered off how to set up your taxes, how to track it when you enter income, expenses, bills to pay, whatever, how to report on it, and best practices around saving those reports. And then how do you remit it in Kashoo so that you have the proper entry and you're ready for your next remitting period. That was the full extent of what I wanted to focus on today. If you guys have any questions, please put them into the question area because I'd love to make sure you're getting what you need out of this session today. But if you don't have any questions, if you feel like a tax rock star, you know exactly what to do, then that is awesome. Then I've done a great job. I hope that I was able to clarify how to set up and use taxes for services performed and to know how much you need to pay quarterly or annually. And yeah, basically guys, at that point, we're just gonna flip back to my spreadsheet because nobody's got any questions for me, or my spreadsheet, my PowerPoint. And I just wanna remind you a couple things that you can do today. So download the app. If you use Apple products, check out the app because the really great thing I like about having the app on your phone or on your iPad is that you're going to get your expenses entered in more real time. And so the thing about getting those expenses entered means that you're going to have more write-offs, that you're going to, you know, lots of times people don't forget to enter income, but they do forget to enter expenses. And so they end up paying the government more sales tax, more income tax, all those sort of things. So make sure you're getting all of your expenses in the system. That's like my best tip to you. Don't miss out on expenses because you'll pay the government more tax. Remit your taxes in Kashoo if you haven't already, and then get in touch. You know, we are here to support you. We are all about customer success at Kashoo, and that means that we've got live chat in our app, we've got phone, we've got email support, we've got these weekly workshops we run, we've got some recorded workshops if you can't connect. For Phaeton, who was wondering if it was recorded because he was running a bit late today, absolutely, I'll send out the recording to everybody that registered for the session today. So just check your inbox probably tomorrow. I probably won't get it out today, but check your inbox tomorrow for it. And then, you know, if you haven't signed up for our annual membership, that is a great way to save a little bit of money. And remember at the beginning, I said we have special pricing if you want to have multiple businesses in Kashoo. Just basically add those new businesses, come down to that bottom chat box and just say, hey, just add a new business. Nikki said there's a special rate. We'll set you all up with special pricing for your additional businesses. So we did have another question. I have a vendor who charges me in US dollars and charges me GST. How do I record this properly? Are they in the US? That's Aileen, that's a kind of an unusual, okay. It's a software company. Okay, so software companies have all sorts of crazy rules about how they have to charge tax. So yeah, basically, let me jump back into the product here. If you are using Kashoo in a multi-currency format, then it would be relatively easy. We'd come into our expense area. Let me just get back here. We'd go to enter expenses. We'd say this was, you know, let's just say it was ABC Lab equipment, and let's say they paid me in US dollar, or they charged me in US dollars. Now, that probably converted on your credit card into Canadian, right? So we can say exchange payment, yes, for Canadian dollars. If it didn't, if you have a US credit card or whatever, that's fine. But if it's a Canadian credit card, they're charging in US, you're getting it in Canadian. This is how you do it. And so let's just say that instead of this being $1,000, this was $99, and it included this tax, right? So here's what we can see is that the US 471 actually turned into $6.19 in tax. If for some reason that rate is not the correct rate and what you saw on your credit card wasn't $130.15, but maybe that what you saw on your credit card was maybe what you saw on your credit card was $132.56. Oops, wait, I have my decimal point wrong because that's $99. equals $131.52. So this is how much my invoice was for. This is how much showed up on my Visa statement. So then Kashoo will figure out the rate for you, and then you can set the rate. And then this will be accurate. Okay, so it's just really that simple. If you're not using multi-currency functionality inside Kashoo, which if you want to use our iOS apps, you should not use the multi-currency functionality because you cannot use the iOS apps if you have a single multi-currency transaction in your business. So for those of you that do like one transaction a month or a year or whatever, I would say just do it manually. So in this case, let's just say this was Canadian. And what I would do is I would just come in here and I would say $131.52, including taxes, and I would do the adjustment here rather than using the currency converter. Okay, so hopefully that helps you guys out. Like I said, here's some of the things you can do today. Here's how you can reach out to us. Next week, we have an Accounting 101 webinar that's really meant for new users to Kashoo. So if you have a friend who's thinking about online accounting software, get them to sign up for the trial, get them to come to that workshop. If you know some other small business owners in your neighborhood that you go to, business meetups with, let them know. We've got this great session next week. It's an opportunity for them to get familiar with the software, learn about whether or not this might be a great tool for them. Or you might learn something new if you want to attend. You're more than welcome. So thank you guys so much for your time today. I hope this has been useful to you. Don't hesitate to reach out if you feel like you're at all hesitant about how you have your tax set up. We'd rather help you at the beginning than have to help you when you need to go back and resave 3 months worth of transactions because you didn't have it set up right. So have an awesome day. Thank you guys so much, and don't hesitate to reach out.